Greetings, Awakening Souls. My name is Karen Anderson.
And my name is Barry Martin Snyder, and our website is luminousself.com. The link is below.
And we'd love you to come visit our website and let us know how you resonate with it. Today we're going to be talking about the cul-de-sac of non-dual awakening.
This isn't to slur or demonize non-dual awakening, but what we found is that there's an error that happens due to a number of factors, beginning with the lack of understanding of the totality of the spiritual path and journey, and also things that happen in the process of the non-dual experience that can cause one to become limited and identified with that as the totality of spirituality. We did previously a video called The Perennial Philosophy, where we talked in there about all the different facets that the major spiritual traditions point to as all the aspects of the human spiritual path and journey. And one of those, the first one, is that vector of ascent. When we first start to wake up, we know there's something more, and we're seeking for something transcendent to get above our human experience, and all the pain and suffering that we experience is what usually precipitates the search to begin with. So we're looking for that thing that's beyond, and that starts that path of ascent to realize what God is, the absolute, the divine, Brahman, the source, whatever. And that comprises that, typically that first big leap we make and path we go on. It's a beautiful part of the journey when it begins. It's often called the honeymoon, because all of a sudden we're lifted out of all these kind of limited experiences of just human consciousness, sensory-based experience, and our conceptual frameworks that have kind of imprisoned us. We start to lift up above that, and all of a sudden we get some clear air, and we feel something that we've been looking for. And that's a whole part of our being that is not in a body. It is transcendent. And so we start to begin to experience that and move higher and higher to find the vastest state of transcendent consciousness possible. And that becomes the goal of the experience, of the journey. There's so much incredible positive reinforcement for those transcendental experiences, because all of a sudden we experience this peace that we didn't know was there, for instance. Or we experience this luminous light that we just showers on us that just is so liberating. We experience being lifted above the cacophony of the human mind. And we can experience tremendous bliss. Just this most delicious feeling of being showered with something that is so attractive energetically. That bliss that just is the sweetest thing we've ever experienced in our lives.
And who doesn't like bliss? I mean, especially if our human lives have been, infused with suffering, if we've experienced a lot of trauma, if we have, painful inner child memories and all of that, of course, that bliss is going to be magnetic for us. We want nothing but more of that. And it makes perfect sense when we think of our human selves and all they go through. Of course, we would want something that feels wonderful instead of the life that we've known, which often didn't feel so wonderful.
So we often identify that as the sum total of what this is about, is going deeper into that bliss, into that light, even into the realms beyond what we call a God or a source, into the absolute states, so the states of the emptiness or the empty fullness, where there is absolutely no sense of a self, where any sense of I, me, or mine is gone, and there's just infinite presence, infinite consciousness. There's a great line in one of the Ashtavakra Samhita quotes, which is one of the classic Advaita Vedanta, which is a non-dual path, that we often quote, "I am consciousness bliss, supreme bliss, in and upon which the universe appears like a snake in a rope." It's all illusion. When we get to that level, we see the illusory nature from that perspective of all conditional, embodied material states of reality. They look just like that snake on a rope. They're just something the mind is projecting out there, and that has no ultimate truth, power, reality. It is Maya, as has often been called in the East.
Over the years, Barry and I have often read aloud to each other from the Ashtavakra Samhita because it is so full of these ultimate truths and ultimate ways of looking at everything. And there's just a gleeful giddiness that can overtake us as we extricate ourselves from the morass of everything that's down here in the human realm that we've all felt was like sticky glue at times. Yet when we are blessed with these transcendent experiences, and when we are thrust upward into the higher dimensional realms, and when we have all kinds of very spiritually glamorous experiences, we can find out that there are subtle levels of ego still present, and the way we find out is that they are identifying with those experiences. They're thinking, "Oh, I've made it," as if there were an I that has made anything. So it's like the inherent contradictions in the whole situation become so apparent to us. Oh, I achieved this level of consciousness. You haven't achieved that yet, have you? All of this kind of comparison, judging, separating, all of the usual ego mechanisms can show up again in this, quote, spiritual guise.
Even if we transcend that and go further beyond where there's any sense of anything existing, that absolute realm, it's often called the ground, the Dharmakaya in the Buddhist tradition, where there's just this pure emptiness, it is also full, it can't be described. It's often called the ground.
Or the fertile void.
Or the ineffable, because any words that we would use to describe it only simply take one away from what it is, because it is beyond anything that can be talked about or understood. And that is often considered the peak of it is. But it is only one dimension of the spiritual journey, for it has three. If God, or what is all that is, nothing can be excluded. And that means individualized being, or the idea of a soul, the reality of a soul, has to be included. The reality of material reality has to be included. Is it just all Maya and not real? Or is there some part of the divine that is in form, that some part of the divine that is individualized as a totality? And those are all the other aspects of this journey that need to be understood, honored, and journeyed.
So looping back around, if we view the transcendental realms and our experiences of them as the only part of awakening that matters, as the real awakening, the true awakening, this is where we hit a cul-de-sac. We find ourselves going around in circles if we believe that this is everything.
Eventually, for many, because the true spiritual journey is integral to all these three levels, the complete transcendental, the individualized existence of the divine as our true nature is the soul, and also the existence of God as that which is in and behind all forms, all manifest reality. All those three are parts of it. But when we're identified solely, that it's only about those transcendental, even no self experiences, we find ourselves in a cul-de-sac. We can find ourselves in a cul-de-sac. Even while we feel like there might be something more, there becomes almost like an addictive thing. Well, if I can just get more of that, higher of that, I'll find this thing that'll finally release me from anything that's still bubbling up from my unconscious, from a wound in childhood, or anything that's not working in my life and my relationships. I just have to go higher. I just have to get vaster. I just have to die to self till I am nothing.
I don't want to deal with any of that stuff because I might get stuck down in those lower realms. I might find myself trapped there. I might get, stuck in the glue of the third dimensional level. I might never be able to go up again and access those realms. So I'm not going near that stuff.
And after all, it's all Maya or illusion anyhow. So why would you even do that? It's just an endless puddle of dark goop that we don't want to get in because we'll get stuck to it. And it's not real anyhow. So just keep going higher and beyond it all.
We saw this through our own experience about 20 years ago. We were brought to India when a good friend of ours told us that he and his wife had discovered something called the Diksha. And it was being given in an ashram in India by people that called themselves Bhagavan and Amma, a married pair. And it seemed that people were having amazing awakenings and really incredible experiences. So we heard our friend talking about this. He said, you might want to check this out. And we felt into it. We went on the website. We thought, yeah, okay, we can go over there and find out for ourselves what's going on with all this. So we made that journey in 2004. We had some pretty amazing experiences there and decided to go back in 2005 and receive the capacity to give the Diksha.
Just to give you an idea, these are the most powerful transmissions of grace we've ever experienced. When they were given, people literally had the totality of their sense of self, even down to a physical level, would dissolve. Some people became like babies and had to learn how to walk again.
Right.
These experiences were so powerful. It was a complete erasure of any sense of self. And Karen said we went back in 2005, the next year, to become initiated to be able to share these with people.
So it was amazing to be in the room when the Diksha was given, because at this point, the Diksha had become something that Bhagavan gave to his closest disciples, who were called dasas. And so here we all are, hundreds of us, Westerners, Easterners, people from all over the world that had gathered for this Diksha-giving training. And Bhagavan is in the front of the hall. The male dasas are on one side of him, and the female dasas are on the other. When he gave each of the male dasas their Diksha, they each went limp. They were completely unable to even support their bodies in an upright position. So when it came time for them to give the Diksha to all of us, they had to be held up from behind. When he gave it to the female dasas, they all went into gales of laughter, and soon the whole hall was full of everybody laughing because that laughter was so contagious. It was like the laughter of seeing through all the illusions and delusions and confusions that you had ever known in all of your lifetimes. It was a laughter of freedom, of joy, of release.
It was like in one moment, everything that had limited one was erased, gone, never to have existed.
So we became Diksha givers, and as people began to find this out about us, we were invited to places like Eugene, Oregon, Corvallis, Portland, Ashland, Oregon, and we began to do 7-month groups because we felt that we didn't just want to give the Diksha to people. We wanted to really support their awakening in all the ways that we had already been brought into over, many years of being together. And so as we began to give the Diksha to people, we immediately saw that lots of the people, not everybody, but many, became really entrained to the Diksha, and all they wanted was more Diksha.
And so be it, because, the experiences of these groups were, I think, probably maybe some of the highest things that we've ever had. We'd have 30, 40 people in a room, and you give this Diksha, and the transcendent bliss, luminosity was ecstatic. It was so beyond the beyond. And we, this is it. It was like an it that we all hunger and thirst for. And here was 40 people, just soaking in this thing. And just incredible. We were very clear at that time that was only a portion of what the spiritual journey is. So we would do maybe one of these transmissions or two during a weekend experience. And the rest of the time, we would deal with the other dimensions of what we knew to be the spiritual awakening, taking them in to their soul, the soul lotus above their heart, to experience the God that lives in them as them. We'd have them do movement, get them into their body, get them down into their belly center, be with feelings, be with emotions, to try to get this balanced approach to this that we knew was an integral, complete awakening.
But what people wanted was, when can we have another Diksha? And we really saw that it was becoming an addiction for these people. And we knew that it was not a good idea for us to feed that addiction. And we weren't sure what to do about it. It was something we had never run into before.
There were some people who literally would drive. There were a number of Diksha givers on the West Coast. There were some people that would literally travel from town to town.
Hundreds of miles.
Just to be and get more Dikshas. They became Diksha addicted, basically. They wanted the next bliss hit like it was a drug. And we were watching this and just confounded by all this. And then a number of experiences unfolded that really shook us up. There was one man in particular, a beautiful being, believe me, and he was getting so radiant in with all these Dikshas, a loving man.
Everybody loved this guy.
Everybody loved this guy. And then we came to one of the weekend events, and we walked in, and there was stillness, and there was this pall over the room. And they said, Mike died. He was found dead.
In his hotel room.
In his hotel in Mount Shasta. His heart had stopped. And it was just like the ceiling fell in. And we knew what happened. We instantly knew. He was a salesman. He had been going from town to town to town getting all these Dikshas. The heart is the place that mediates between the lower chakras and the higher chakras. And when there's two, we had before, working with people would get heart fibrillations and things at times when transmissions were given, where they would wind up in the emergency room, and then they'd go in there and there was nothing wrong with their heart. But it was just like all this energy was trying to, like Kundalini type kind of stuff, was trying to get up through their lower chakras into their higher chakras, and the heart would go into fibrillation because it couldn't handle the differential in the charge between what they'd built up. It's kind of like lightning. Lightning was in their head and it was trying to get down, and the heart would go out of balance trying to modulate all this. Well, Mike's heart gave up. It simply could not transduce this, and it just stopped. And he left his body. And that was a dark wake-up call for us that, whoa. We've got to just take this train in a different direction as best we could.
And yet a lot of the people who knew Mike and had known him over years felt really happy about the way he had left, because they saw the beautiful state that he was coming into and was embodying more and more and more. And they felt that, okay, he was done here. He basically vibrated right out of his life pattern and right out of the third dimensional form that he had been living in. And he was free now. He was in a higher dimensional realm, and and able to experience 24/7 everything that had been, showering him with blessings in his recent last years of his life.
So, in complete acceptance, we saw the reality of that. This must have been his path somehow. But it was also a very stark learning and lesson
Right.
about where this journey can go. Sure, that may have been his path to leave his body in that way. But it's also a consideration that we had to have karmically in being the ones who were sharing this with people. And that was amplified even further months later in a group in Eugene, Oregon, in which a being came to us who had been on a non-dual path for decades and decades. And he was actually a friend of this man who died. And he came for these dikshas. And would get these dikshas and go into incredible pain, incredible suffering. And we would try our best to bring him down where we could feel some of this pain, to drop into this enormous suffering that he was in that he couldn't touch. He couldn't deal with emotionally, psychologically.
The whole group was holding space for him sometimes where we would facilitate his dropping in to some of the places that he was unable to get to on his own. And we thought that maybe that would be a way that we could support him through this deep dive that he was taking, that the light from above was really bringing him down into.
So we worked on this as best we could. We worked on by phone. And then again, one weekend, we went back to Eugene. And there was this sullen darkness in the room. And one of the people said, "Howard is not with us any longer. He left a note." And in this note, he said, "Please do not think badly of me, but I cannot continue this journey any longer. I love you, I'm painful, but I must go on." And everybody wondered what happened.
There were people looking all over Eugene for him, just scouring all the neighborhoods where they thought he might have been or might have hung out.
And I think we found his bike down by the river in Eugene. His bike was found, and people started wondering, "Oh, God, did he drown?" And they started walking the river. And sometime later, his body was found downstream. He got in so much pain. We all saw that it's so metaphorical, but actually, he gave himself back to the Great Mother, to water, to the feminine that he got disconnected with, the belly center of his being that he lost touch with what nourished him as a soul, what supported his life, what connected him with the ground, with the earth.
He so wanted to rise above it all, and he so believed that was the path. The path was about rising above it all, that if he just got out there and could stay out there in that non-dual state, he could be beyond it all, and he would not have to face any of that pain, and he would be able to, continue living his life in an exalted state.
Again, not to make this wrong, not to judge it in any way, but to take a lesson from this, which we did. This is what can happen. And these are very dramatic. I want to make clear, these are very, very dramatic situations that we don't want to project on anybody or anything else.
No, but we felt that they had come into our lives as powerful reminders that when a path is pursued in an imbalanced way, the parts of us that don't get any love and attention, that don't feel like they're included at the table, that feel like they're shut out, they're shunned, they're excluded, can roar up with even more force and more momentum than they ever would have had if they had been included in the fold of a complete and balanced approach to spirituality and awakening. And that's what can happen. The pressure can really build up inside because of what has been ignored.
And even outside of these incredible dramatic experiences, we felt was like life was really trying to ground us and help us see something profoundly. But we also saw then later something happen with whole groups of people in Europe, particularly I think Scandinavia, who had been receiving the same kind of many of these transmissions of Diksha. And we would be in touch with them, and they were feeling lost in their lives. Their money began to dry up, for instance. Their finances just fell apart. Their relationships dissolved.
Yeah, they couldn't connect with people anymore.
Yeah.
And they were really having trouble connecting with their very selves. They didn't know what to eat. They didn't know how to find any happiness in being in their bodies on the planet Earth. They just felt like they were lost and adrift. They didn't want to live anymore, some of them. And they had exhausted all sorts of seeking for something that would help them feel better. And somehow they stumbled upon our teleconferences that we had begun to offer in the years after we initially received the Diksha, to offer Ilahi Nur, which was all about honoring and including the belly soul center, where the inner child lives, where the past traumas that we've all been through are living and waiting for us to come back to them and love and embrace them into wholeness, where the emotional side of our nature is, especially the vulnerable emotions that so many beings on that non-dual path had just tried to go beyond. And so as these people began to experience Ilahi Nur, as they began to drop into their belly soul center and gather on teleconferences with lots of other people doing that same thing, they would begin to write us emails saying, I am so glad that I found this. Now I think I can still be here. Now I want to live again. I'm finding my way with what to eat and how to be in my body and how to balance out all the highlight awakenings and openings that I had. They're not the whole story. They left me feeling empty and alone.
So all these experiences prompted us seeing this again, arising in some people that we work with. We just felt compelled to share this experience. For food for thought, for consideration.
And we would love to hear your comments in the comments below.
Yeah.
If any of what we've shared here has been a part of your experience, or if you've known anybody in your spiritual circle that has grappled with some of the issues that we've described here, and if you see it differently, we would love to hear from you in any and all ways, because we feel we're just putting this out as a part of the conversation, and that we're all part of that conversation.
Yeah, we are finding our way like everybody else. There's always a new dimension of this journey, even after 35 years, that opens up for us. We do not purport that we know it all. Actually, the more further we go, the less we know we know.
Absolutely. And all along the way, we've been brought into experiences that were part of our education on a spiritual level. And, we just really feel that part of our job on the planet is just to share what we've been given as understandings. And we know that everybody is a part of that process of increasing all of our understanding.
So we're going to do another audio very shortly here that talks about the way we've been given to work with people that embodies all three of these aspects and the core behind that, which is the individualized aspect of God that we are, that incorporates all three of these dimensions as I mentioned. And
that video is going to be called Our Approach to Awakening.
So you can wait for that, and I'll tell you more. And if you do want to connect with us, go to the link below and go to the Contact Us, and drop us an email. And
we'd love to hear from you.
Love to hear from you.
And we look forward to that.
Sincerely hope this is helpful to you. In no way are we cast any aspersions or anything on anybody's path or way of doing it. Just wanting to share something we thought has been profoundly insightful and important for us in this journey, and may it be helpful to you also.
And we send you our love and blessings always. Namaste.
Namaste.